typical Figma live stream style. First up, I'm going to ask you to open that chat, and then you're going to want to drop it down and make sure you're chatting to everyone, not just the host and the panelist. Otherwise, you're going to be shouting into the void. So drop that down to everyone. Let's bring it all in. Let's get that Figma community in. And the first thing we always do, and we've done for years, is to say, where are you from? Tell us where you're from. We love that Figma is this global, amazing community everywhere across the world. And we love to see, I see Florida, I see the chat is moving far too fast for my eyes. India, Argentina, San Diego, my hometown, thank you. India, great. Nepal, Ukraine, great to have you. A very specific Westminster, Maryland, USA. Thank you. Thank you for that specificity. It's so great to have you. Now, we typically wait a few minutes to get this live stream started, just because we want everyone to be able to enjoy all the tips. So what I decided this time is do something a little bit different. I'm gonna go ahead and play a game with you. And in that game, we're gonna go ahead and give out some swag. Now the swag might be swag that's in our swag store, or if I can talk Vanessa into it, we might be able to find some secret swag, but we're gonna have swag to give away. Now I'm gonna call this game, it's a little questionnaire, and I'm gonna call it 3 commands. That's my name for the game. And I'm gonna tell you 3 separate commands. And you're gonna want to match the command to the shortcut. So this is really testing that shortcut knowledge. So here we go. Here's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna tell you the command, and then you're gonna smash that chat, and you're gonna start putting in what that command is. Now, my esteemed colleague and fellow designer advocate, Miggy, is going to be watching that chat, as well as Vanessa on our events team. We love her. They're going to be watching the chat for the right answer, and we will reach out to you and DM you. So that's how it's gonna work. Now, everybody get those keyboards ready. Are your keyboards ready? I wanna see a resounding yes in the chat. Otherwise, I don't know if I wanna start this. Okay, this is absolutely a resounding yes. I cannot humanly follow this chat, but let's get started. The first question, now, get ready, get that keyboard ready. The first question is gonna be for my prototyping pros. These are people that love prototyping, all right? What is the shortcut to present or to go into presentation mode? Once again, what is the shortcut to present or go into presentation mode? Let's see that chat blowing up. Let's see that chat blowing up. Once again, we can't humanly parse this, but Miggy and Vanessa will go through here. We're going to move on to the next question. A lot of people know a lot of things, so it's amazing. The next one is for my Bezier curve ballers. Those are going to be people that love vector editing and kind of know a little bit of the nuance of all the things that you can do within vector tools. So get ready, take a deep breath. This is the command. What is the command? The shortcut to smooth join a selection. Smooth join a selection. Oh, we've got, I see people getting close. I see people getting, okay, we definitely have got to get a right answer in there somewhere. Y'all are getting very close. Yes, I saw in the chat, is it recorded? Absolutely, it's gonna be recorded. We'll put it on YouTube later. All right, and the last one, before we get started, is gonna be for my font fanatics. That's anybody that loves to open that properties panel and loves to dig into the type details. Now, this one may be easier than you think, we'll see. The question is, how do you scrub a font size to change it? So not just type in the font, not just drop the font down to a different font size, but how can you actually do a key command to drag over or scrub to change that font size? Let's go ahead and see that answer in the chat. Got a lot, we've got people saying scroll ball. Yes, it's a hint is it's a key combo while you're scrubbing over the actual font size field. All right, that was such a fun game, a rip-roaring chat. I love to see it. You are very lively today, and I cannot wait to get this started. But first, I'm going to walk you through a few things, just so you know. So, question we always get about our live streams is, are they going to be on YouTube later? And the answer is yes, absolutely. It's being recorded. It's going to be available on youtube.com/Figma Design. You can go ahead and go over there and see a lot of our other live streams. We're going to try to get that on there in about a week. Next thing is, like I told you before, open that chat to everyone so we can all talk together and be buds. And lastly, be kind. We do have a code of conduct, but generally speaking, let's be kind to each other and extremely kind, maybe even praise or be awesome to our speakers who have spent time to prepare for you today. And next up, let's get started. We're going to be doing Figma Like the Pros. It's a once-a-year live stream on tips and tricks from the team that builds Figma, one of my very favorite live streams. And first, to introduce myself, in case you don't know me, I'm Raji King. I've actually just celebrated my 3-year anniversary at Figma, and it's been what a ride. I'm a designer advocate at Figma, and my job is to listen to you all, show you all really cool ways to use Figma, but more than anything, my job is to listen to you all and bring that feedback back to our product team and say, here's how we can make Figma better for you all. All right, let's get started with our first speaker. So our first speaker up is Mallory Dean, who's a designer advocate. That's absolutely my team. And a little bit about Mallory. Mallory grew up as a competitive dancer, volleyball player, and a cheerleader with a short stint in figure skating. And today, Mallory is going to talk to us about 10 Figma gems, 10 Figma gems. Please give her applause in the chat. She's the first speaker up. Let's go, Mallory.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mallory, like Raji said. I am also a designer advocate at Figma. And today I'm going to be going over 10 Figma gems. These are going to be really helpful, maybe small but mighty tips that hopefully will up-level your workflow. And maybe you can share them with other people as well. So the first one I'm going to show is our delete and heal tool, which there's 2 parts to this. On the left, if you enter into your path and then go into the pen tool. And if you want to kind of edit the shape a little bit, maybe you want to get rid of some of these points, you can hold down Option and click on these points and it'll automatically delete and heal that path, which is really helpful if you're editing these vector shapes, right? But we can also, go in and edit these curves a bit, and we want to delete specific selected points. So I'm going to go into this path again, and I'm going to hold down Shift. And what we're going to do is maybe clean up this section here. So I'm going to while holding down Shift, I'm going to select these and hit delete. And you'll see this curve is going to start to look a little bit nicer. And let's try that again up here. And as you can see, it's smoothing it out, and it's also taking care of some of the excess points. So really helpful when we want to do some editing of our vectors. Next, we have the paint bucket, which is also within the pen tool as well. If we click into this path, you'll see it up in the left corner, but you can also hit B on your keyboard. And now I can actually go in and fill these overlapping spaces within any of the vectors. And this is really great if you're an illustrator within Figma. So you can go in and color your illustrations without having to make another vector path within it. And you can come in here and edit those colors as well. Moving on, let's talk about nudge amount. So when you're moving things on the canvas, you may have seen that you can use your keyboard to actually, with your up and down arrows and left and right, you can nudge them around. This is really helpful to just have that fine editing, but you can actually set your nudge amount. So it will nudge a specific amount. We have a small nudge, which is just 1 up and 1 down, or if you hit Shift, it will do a larger nudge. If you want to edit those numbers, which they shift, you can go into your preferences all the way down to nudge amount. And I'm going to change my nudge amount to be 8 instead of 10, just to have it better aligned to like an 8-pixel grid. And I can also edit this here as well. So as you'll see, as I'm holding down Shift, it's going up or down in multiples of 8. It's really helpful if you want to have some fine tuning. Next, let's talk about the scale tool. So this is actually my personal favorite because it took me a while to find it. But when I found it, it really blew my mind. So as you know, when you're scaling vectors or pretty much anything within any design tool, it can be a little bit challenging because you see the strokes and paths just shift around. But if you press K on your keyboard, it will enter into scaling. And now I can move this up and down and retain all of those properties right there. We've also recently updated this panel over here to have it to scale to an exact amount, and you can choose the direction from which it scales from here. Next, I want to share that you can actually also edit your padding for your auto layout within the canvas. So as I'm entering this card here, you can see I should be able to, I guess it's not working quite like I planned, but you you should be able to see specific lines here. Maybe it's not showing with the zoom settings, but you'll have pink handlebars that you can actually click and drag around. And that is how you can edit the padding within the canvas without having to go, oh, you know what? It's because I'm in the scale tool right now. Okay, so that's why. So you can see here, I can edit these and move them around without having to go to the actual panel here. I can hold down option and edit opposite sides, or option shift and do that as well. And you can even click in here and edit the exact number. Just really quick ways to, without having to move to the design panel. Next, I'm going to show you how to copy and paste properties. So you can copy fills, strokes, effects, styles from one object to another while retaining that. So I'm going to take this amazing design of this star here and bring it to the circle. So with your object selected, you're going to hit Command Option C or Control Alt C and do Command Option V. It also works for text too. So I can, make this boring howdy into this beautiful styling I have here. So now we have a beautiful Comic Sans howdy on the right. Moving on quickly, you can also add multiple fills. So I like to do this when I want to add a little bit of contrast for text within my images. If you go to fills, you can add another and it'll automatically add a 20% opacity black. You can go in here and play around with blend modes. Sometimes I'll play around and add a linear gradient so I can have a little bit more retaining of the original image, and maybe I'll bump it up just a bit so I have that brightness but also darkness contrast behind the text. Next, I want to show that you can also do specific selections for your comments. If you are unfamiliar with the comment tool, you can hit C on your keyboard or come up to the top left panel here and leave a comment anywhere on the canvas. Well, what's really awesome is if you click and you drag over a specific section, it will comment referencing that exact context. So maybe, I don't like this gray here. I can leave that comment. And when folks are coming around and they hover over it, they can see exactly what you're referencing. Next, we have the layer hierarchy menu. So if you have a mouse, you can just command right click, or you can just right click using Control or on your keyboard and come to select layer. And this, you can go and see all the layers you have with the selection on your canvas without having to go to your layers panel. This is actually, I just found this out from Raji a few days ago, and it kind of blew my mind that it was right there in the panel without having to go through and sift through the layers. And last, I just want to talk about the interoperability between Figma and FigJam. This is where you can bring Figma designs into FigJam and vice versa, which is really cool. So these two platforms communicate very well. So anything editable that you have in a design, you can bring in. So I brought the screen over and I can come in here and edit the text. And if I have any components, I can swap for variants. Really helpful for design critiques or just jamming into the two different products. And if I have a sticky note, I can come over here and bring it back and paste it and edit it. So really great ways that you can up-level your workflow for both. And with that said, I want to pass it back to Raji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mal, so much for all those incredible tips. I especially love the scale tool. And what our thoughtful product design team has done to actually up-level that and give us the ability to put it in direct, like, I want this to be a half size. Such a incredible ask that you all asked from us. Product design team delivered on that. Enough about that. We're going to move on to our next speaker because this is rapid fire. We have to keep it up. Our next speaker is Natasha Tangora, who's a product designer. Now, Natasha is an amateur potter and spends more time on Letterboxd than any other social network. I really want Natasha to share the link so I can follow on Letterboxd because absolutely I love movies too. Now, Natasha is going to be talking about how FigJam onboards new users. Super fascinating 5-minute deck. Can't wait for Natasha to share. Let's go.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Also, thank you, Raji. I know you're rapid firing through all of these presentations right now. So again, hey, everyone, I'm really glad to be here today to walk you through some behind the scenes work on FigJam. I'm Natasha. I'm a product designer on FigJam's engagement team. And overall, our team's mission is to help more people discover the magic of FigJam. Many of us today in this call, we talk a lot about helping you get the most out of FigJam as a product, whether it's how to better use templates or find hidden gems or discover helpful keyboard shortcuts, all of that really good stuff. And I'm here today to walk you through a small experiment we're running to better help people orient themselves on FigJam for the first time. Why is this important? Well, if you're here today, I'm pretty sure you're relatively aware of FigJam, but when we look back to our first encounters with the product, it's usually because you either saw people talk about it on Twitter, or you had a designer on your team introduce it to you, or you were just already a really strong Figma user and wanted to explore an ancillary product. But at this point, you still didn't know much about it. And that's a very common problem. When we look beyond this community, let's say I'm an engineer at a startup or a product manager working in like a non-tech vertical, I don't really know what FigJam is and what to use FigJam for. As a product, we also really believe in lowering the barrier of use so that FigJam remains simple and intuitive for many users. But no matter how simple of a product we make, some people are just naturally not visual communicators, and they're not focused, are used to the mental model of working in this 2D infinite canvas. And not to mention, FigJam naturally feels more approachable to people like designers or novice designers, since historically we have a higher tolerance for learning since we're having to juggle so many design tools and learning so many of these apps at the same time. But the path of proficiency for someone like a product manager, let's say, who's more frequently used to writing in docs, it becomes a little bit more challenging to navigate. So as a team, one of our goals is to think about how do we want to slowly ease people who don't really know what to use FigJam for and who aren't naturally visual communicators to build a conceptual understanding of how to get the best of FigJam. One of our most recent experiments that we launched was actually around giving new users the ability to try out a limited selection of prominent use cases and go into a guided tutorial to make something within that use case. And our hypothesis here was that we believe that by making these use cases more prominent from the get-go, giving people a more hands-on tutorial, that'll help create a better first impression and lead to a deeper understanding of how to use our product over time. And we're not going to be able to get into the whole design experience with everyone today, but I wanted to share 5 tactics and principles that the team developed behind the scenes for this experiment that you might be able to carry with you as you're designing for first-time guidance in your product. First one is to limit choice and explore core concepts over time. As a team, we made a concerted effort to limit the use cases a new user might see when you first land onto FigJam. Previously, I believe we landed you directly in our templates modal, which held over 100+ templates to choose from. And in order to reduce that initial cognitive friction or choice paralysis, we specifically selected our most primary use cases that we think a new user will be coming in for, so that they can make an easier decision on where to start in our product. So when a new user first lands on FigJam, they basically see their canvas suggesting 4 main use cases: dreaming up new ideas, sharing team templates or team updates, planning for the future, and drawing up diagrams. Those are the main 4. While it's true that you can use FigJam for a lot of things, effective user education comes with exposing new users to core concepts over time. So it's important for us not to bombard people with too much information off the bat. Second tip, alleviate blank canvas anxiety. There's nothing worse than finally getting past the sign-up flow and landing into an intimidating and anxiety-inducing empty canvas. These moments sort of feel overwhelming since sometimes it's either the headroom of possibilities feel too infinite or you just don't really know where to start. And as a team, we really wanted to lower the ceiling and bolster the metaphorical floor new users stand on specifically by allowing them to first preview the template within each use case as a lightweight suggestion. And we call this interaction sort of like ghost previews, where the interface disambiguates that post-click content by allowing people to preview it first. And not only does this help a new user decide whether a use case is right for them, but also alleviates that blank canvas anxiety by leveraging real content as inspiration to motivate people to make something. Third tactic, show, don't tell. Now, once you do select a use case you're interested in, you then go through a series of tooltips that tour you around that template. These tooltips are meant to guide you to utilize our tools in context and allow you to learn by doing, essentially. By enabling this experience to directly also happen on the canvas, it also means that the canvas itself is doing that teaching. This means that people can directly select and manipulate nodes and dive deep into our tools with confidence that FigJam can teach me how to use it. And the cherry on top is that you're not only learning each tool, but you're also learning how to apply that tool in the context of a use case. So next time you're running a brainstorm or you're doing quarterly planning, you know exactly what to use and where it lives. Fourth tip, give users agency to choose their own path. One important principle that we really believed in was to empower people to go at their own pace and choose their own path to education. Not everyone learns the same way. And for many new users, that could mean jumping into a product and playing with each tool right away, using the marker tool or dragging a sticky right away and inputting out on your canvas. But for others, it could mean wanting something a little bit more guided. So one small detail we added was an ability to revisit these templates down the line at their own time in case somebody just wants to create something that they have in mind right away. So when a user dismisses that modal to start from scratch, we just reassure them that they can find these lessons again in the future. Last tip is that content is king. One important call out I want to make is the tone of voice that our really talented UX writer Schmidt created for this new user experience. Now, content tones can vary depending on the nature of your product, but for FigJam, we really wanted to utilize content in unique and fun ways. So for this experiment specifically, our UX writer did a fantastic job emulating a more conversational tone within each tooltip so that it feels like your friend or your teammate is personally taking you through the product themselves. And I think this is such a special way to make learning a new product feel more personal. So to quickly recap, here are the 5 principles that I quickly walked everyone through today, and I'm hoping that they can be helpful tactics and tips so that you can set your own teams up for success when it comes to creating a positive first impression in your product that gets people excited to come back, since at the end of the day, that's what matters. If you're signing up for a new account on FigJam, keep an eye out for this experiment. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Raji.
Natasha, thank you so much. I think David from the chat said something about, I love how FigJam is so thoughtful about the UX of this. I especially loved when we did ghost previews, and I love how FigJam's pushing the boundaries of like, how playful can products get? Like, how joyful can we make them? But I love how much thought y'all are putting into this, and I think that's amazing. So next up, we're gonna go ahead and have Leandro. But before I talk about Leandro, I know a lot of y'all have been sharing LinkedIn in the chat. I know you want to connect. We'd ask that you, out of respect for the speakers, really keep this on topic with what we're talking about. So no sharing links off to other things. Let's do that somewhere else, and let's focus on this. I appreciate respect in that regard. All right, next up, we're going to have Leandro Castellao, also known as Dro internally. He just goes by Dro. He's a brand designer here, originally from Argentina, a former drummer of 2 bands in his hometown of Buenos Aires. And today, Dro is going to be talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is building Figma's Illustrator library. And he kind of shows you that components aren't just for UI. Dro, come on up.
Thanks so much, Raji. Hi, everyone. Set up. My name is Leandro Castellao. I go by Dro, like Raji said. He, him are my pronouns. And I'm a brand designer here at the Figma Brand Studio team. And today I'm going to walk you all through our illustration library. So a quick background about this illustration library. This library contains tons of illustrations that our team built with the goal of providing fresh assets to fellow Figmates. And it's a grab and go style. Users come to the file, check what's available, then they can, take it to their own files like any other library, copying, pasting, swapping. Oftentimes they use these assets for presentations. And to be honest, like these illustrations really make those texts shine. So we build the process using components. And today I'll walk you all through a little bit of how that process went. So to begin with, a library needs consistency. And one of those pillars, one of the pillars of illustration style is the color palette. This is our Figma brand color palette. It's a shared library that we have in our team, and it really makes things easier when it comes to color, especially when working with these type of assets where you really want to stay on brand, and it's very easy to update if needed to. Another important characteristic for illustration style is the stroke weight. So each of the assets in the library come in large, medium, and small. So to speed things up, something you can do, when you want to like grab a stroke style from another, a shortcut that Mallory just shared with you all, Command Shift, so yeah, it's just like Option Command and C in Mac, and then Option Command V, and it just copies the whole style. So in this case, when we're talking about strokes and color, it will just copy the stroke and color of like certain shape and take it to the next one. So like I mentioned before, each asset comes in 3 sizes, and here's an example of an asset. So here you can see a large, a medium, and a small size. So you can check that the stroke weight, it's a little bit different on each, and also the composition change, especially if you see the smallest version of these assets, you see that there are like less elements on them. So a top tip, if you're working with different sizes and you're looking for consistency, create a flexible layout grid, one that fits your needs. Our has a basic square grid, like you see there, those like tiny red blocks. And then 3 distinctive columns, like 1 per size. So each column has a unique color. So that makes it easy to distinguish which one is which. So finally, once you set up those grids, create a unique style, one that contains all of them. So in this case, the style we created is called illustration grid, and it has large, medium, and small grid in it, plus the basic grid block. And that way, when you're working on an asset, it's very easy to preview. Let's say you're working on large and you want to see, the medium or the small. It's really easy to kind of like have a bit of a sense of how those are going to look. And this opens the window to one of my favorite shortcuts, which is Control G. And basically what this shortcut does, it's turns the visibility of the grids on and off. And it's really helpful, especially in cases like this, where the illustrations are such a complex like organisms that it's really helpful to be able to like turn that on and off. So here's the money, very important part. As I mentioned earlier, this illustration library uses components, and here's how we do it. So each of these finished illustration has 3 different sizes: large, medium, and small, and then 2 color options, 1 and 2. If you see the top row here, you'll see that the 3 sizes are using the same color combination. And if you see the row below, you'll see that it's the same thing, but in a different color combo. So basically what we do is we select the 6 frames and turn them into a component set. So by default, it's going to create a variant. We're going to rename it size. And then we'll add a new variant. We're going to rename it color. So now all we have to do is edit those values. So I'll select the 2 large ones, make them large. I'll select the medium ones, make them medium. And I'll select the small ones and make them small. And then I'll go to the top row and I'll want to turn that into color 1. And then I'm going to go to the row below and turn it into color 2. And that's pretty much it. Here, I'm going to just walk you all through a quick example of a file called Cupboard file. It's a file that has a bunch of different decks and how this library is used in real life. This file is fed with the illustration library that we have. And it's pretty easy. You see how you can swap, you can choose an illustration that matches the content of your slide. You can change the color. So it's pretty easy, and it's like a really fun resource to use. So last but not least, I just want to thank our brand studio team. A lot of the stuff that I've shown just has a lot to do with them, their work. And I want to thank everyone today at Figma Like the Pros. I'm really excited to be here. So I'll pass it back to Raj. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dro. I have loved seeing how our brand design team has grown so rapidly over the last year, but also like all the incredible like usages of components and color styles and swaps and variants and all of this stuff together has been really incredible to see. And it's also created such an incredible library for all of our teams that are not designers. Great job, brand design team. Moving on rapidly, we're going up next to Katie Chambers. Now on the Designer Advocate team as well, we have a very special kind of designer advocate just for FigJam. Katie has an identical twin and named her daughter after a Scottish island. No clue what that is. But also today, Katie's going to be talking to us about FigJam tips for meetings, generally getting people involved and getting people engaged. So Katie, can't wait to welcome you up. Come on up.
Thanks so much, Raji. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie, and I am a FigJam advocate here at Figma, as Raji said, and I am so excited to be here with you all today. Now, the FigJam team is obsessed with visual communication and meeting experience. And personally, there's nothing I love more than a really well-run meeting, but we know that meetings are also really hard to facilitate well. It's hard to get those participants engaged, keep them engaged, or you have the loudest person dominating the room. And today, I'm excited to share 5 tips to redesign your meetings using FigJam to make them more collaborative and engaging. Digging right in. First, I recommend setting meeting guidelines at the start of every meeting. This can be as simple as just having a few quick guidelines that you have at the top of your board and introduce at the start of your meeting in order to get everyone engaged on how you want them to show up for that meeting. Now, if you're looking for tips on what types of guidelines to use, I've created a community file that you can find on figma.com/community, search for meeting guidelines, and there's some examples to get you started. You can pull the 1 or 2 that work for your meeting and customize them to make them your own. I've also created a few different styles and created these as components in Figma, so you have a few different variants that you can use for colors or different illustrations you can pull into your file. So check those out, start adding guidelines to every meeting, and this is also a great time to get your participants engaged by having them start using emotes. So bring them into the board, have them use emotes to react to your guidelines just to show that they're engaged and aligned with what you're sharing. Moving right on to tip number 2. Show your style with custom sticker libraries. Stickers are a great way to represent how you're feeling about certain components and bring some fun into your meetings. And you can have custom sticker libraries to bring in certain elements to your meetings to really make it custom to your team. A few things I love to do with this. First, we have this awesome community file for FigJam tips. This is a great way to orient folks who may or may not be familiar with FigJam functionality to different things that you're asking them to do on the board. And what you can do is you can bring this into a Figma file, make all of these tips components, then bring that library in, create a library out of it, and then bring it into your FigJam file. So then what you can do is in the stickers area here, you can pull up that custom library for FigJam tips, and you can pull any tips into your boards here. So I can quickly pull in the tips for managing libraries here. Another thing I love to do with custom libraries is brand components. So if you have logos, illustrations like the ones Joe was just talking about, you can easily pull those into your file as well. Another thing you can do is wireframing components. So if you want to quickly concept, create designs with your team, bring those components into FigJam and you can pull in buttons, you can pull in frames, anything you need to get your group going. And last but not least, with custom sticker libraries, I love to use it for team photos. You can create a library with all of your team's photos. And that way, if you ever want to pull in your own photo or pull in a photo of a teammate, you can quickly search for that in stickers and pull it in here. So that's using custom sticker libraries to create style for your team. Moving right along, my 3rd tip is to start super simple. So asking someone to come into a board, the first thing you should do is have a very easy activity that they can use to get engaged. A few tools you can use in FigJam to do this. First is there's a sticker card called the collaborator card. This has a few different variants you can use of the different designs and colors. And all folks have to do is come in and start filling out the details. This is a great way for a group who may not know one another or who just to make sure everyone's familiar with the folks in the room. Just try out using that card. You can also start, one of my favorites is a poll. It's a 1-click option for people just to respond to a quick icebreaker question. Another Figma favorite is the photo booth widget. You can check that one out. And there's dozens of other widgets available for this. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can simply be a prompt with some text and some stickies on the board that people can react to and respond to an icebreaker question. And last but not least, we have an icebreaker templates. So if you're still looking for more ideas, feel free to check that out. Moving on to my 4th tip of the day, it's important to create a balance of information and engagement in your meetings to make sure that you're really keeping your participants engaged. And it's important to note that attendees are going to disengage if they ever become bored or uncomfortable. So in order to combat this, try to engage at least every 5 to 10 minutes with your group. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be as simple as using those emotes, asking people to react to the things that you're sharing, or putting stamps on the board to show preference or votes or reactions to certain things. And then lastly, for moving the flow of conversation, one of my favorite tools is the flyover widget. That's what I've been using here to move from one slide to the next. You can find it under widgets here. And it's the flyover, and that helps create a seamless flow of information so people don't get uncomfortable, they're not confused where you're going. Use that flyover widget to make it really easy to go from one topic to the next. And moving on to my last topic, it's important to prioritize what's important. Get your group engaged, get the input you need to drive your work forward, make the decisions you need in your meetings. So here, there's a few tools available in FigJam. The first, if you're on a free plan or you want a more lightweight option, simply use stamps. Have people put stamps on the objects, the shapes, the stickies that you want them to vote on. If you're on a pro plan or above, you have a few more other options you can use to do this. The first one is open sessions. You can access that from the top of your screen here under the share button and start an open session. That allows anyone, whether or not they have a FigJam account, to come and participate in your boards. I've shared this link with my Figmates to get involved in this board. Then you also have voting. If you want to have a more formalized prioritization mechanism, start with voting up here in the top left corner. You can give it a title, decide how many votes everybody gets, and then start that vote so people can respond and tell you exactly what their favorites are. And I always like to pair that with a timer and music, which is also up here in the top right corner. Set a timer, start some music. And that is my last tip. And I've asked my participants to come in here and vote for which tip they liked the most. So I have a few Figmates doing that. I can see the votes rolling in here. so you can see kind of what this voting experience looks like. But in summary, I recommend to set meeting guidelines, show your style, custom sticker libraries, start super simple, create balance and flow, and prioritize what's important. Let's see which of these is our group's favorite. And the results are in. It is showing your style with custom sticker libraries, also one of my favorites. With that, I'm excited to turn it back over to Raji.
Incredible, Katie. Without a doubt, you took rapid fire literally. I don't know. I feel like you're definitely going to need to go back to YouTube and then rewatch that because there's so much in there. And with that, we're going to move along. I did also want to shout out that flyover widget. That's by Emin Sinani, one of our great community members that's made a lot of plugins. Check him out, Emin Sinani, E-M-I-N. Anyways, let's move on to our next speaker. All right, so our next speaker is going to be Laura Pang, who's a software engineer on FigJam. I love this talk from Laura because it's specifically from an engineering perspective, so it's very different than the kind of FigJam tips we've been seeing. Now, Laura loves skiing, dancing, and gaming, but is quite mediocre at all of the above. I love that. I celebrate mediocrity. Anyway, Laura's going to be talking about how our engineering team builds features. Can't wait to hear it. Laura, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Today, I'll be sharing some of our secret, but soon to be not so secret, behind the scenes of how we use Figma and FigJam internally to support building out a ton of cool features in FigJam. Specifically, I'll be pulling some examples of how we used it to build out voting for FigJam. And along the way, I'll share some of my favorite tips and tricks in my day-to-day workflow as an engineer. So here is a FigJam file we had made. And what do I use FigJam for? Well, I use it for everything. So I use it for brainstorming, for costing, timelining, welcome cards, presentations like this, you name it, I've probably tried it. And in the very early stages of building out voting, I had made this document to riff with some other engineers about early architectures we could go down and potential next steps to get this feature started. And as you can see, this document is quite large. So my tip number 0, it's 0 indexed because that is just what we do as engineers. Organize your file with sections. You can create a section from the delightful toolbar down here, and we can give it a section, give it a name. This is the context. You can see I've kind of broken down my file using sections. This top part was the context, this middle part, digging into a lot of architectures about trade-offs, next steps we could take. At the bottom, I had a timeline. And then my next favorite tip, this is my favorite thing about FigJam. It's you can copy and paste things directly from Figma into FigJam. So here I had actually copied over some early mocks from our designer, and we could just constantly look back at this to reference like what exactly are we trying to build here. Now below the tip for all my engineers out there, you can draw pretty nice engineering diagrams with engineering shapes and code blocks in FigJam. You can access all the shapes down here. So I could drag out like we can add a cylinder. We can add some file icons, folder icons, and kind of sketch out from a high level what the architecture looks like. And you can also add code blocks, which you can access using the backtick. And here I had actually used the code block to write out the schema of the table I was proposing in this architecture, and other people could kind of comment on like, how does this look? Sometimes I'll even just like write out the code of the entire flow of what I'm building. Lastly, in FigJam, you can up-level your usage with widgets. So here I had actually made out a rough timeline of when we were prototyping out this feature, including all our fun events like Maker Weeks and team offsites. I found this widget by going into this magic toolbox. If I look up calendar, we can see in here, you can just drag out this widget, and now I have a calendar, and I can draw everything over this. But this toolbox has a lot of stuff. So sometimes if you don't know what you're looking for, feel free to dig around here for some extra tools that you can use. But yeah, this is one example of how we used FigJam in the early stages of prototyping outvoting. And now I'm going to hop over into our Figma file that contained our MVP designs. Full disclaimer before I go into that file, despite being an engineer here for 1.5 years, I'm a complete Figma noob. So this is my 0 to 1 tips for navigating Figma almost like a pro, but probably not a full pro just yet. So over here, we have our Figma file. It is also very large. It was a very scrappy project. We were like designing and iterating internally, and it was going fast. So in order to help organize this, we had created this component and used Figma as our source of truth for tracking. So in this component, our designer would update this variant depending on if things were complete, if things were still in progress, or if they're ready for engineers. And we kind of use that to key when parts were ready for engineers to work on. And then we added another component for engineers to indicate back to XFN when things were like on staging and ready for them to report as many bugs as they could find internally. And this kind of helped us keep everything in Figma as a source of truth because it was just such a visual project and it was much easier tracking like what was going on within our own Figma file. Now, as I'm navigating through this Figma file, let's say I'm working on converting this component. My favorite shortcut is I think Command or Control in Windows to click to immediately go into that component so I can see all the properties, like maybe I was wondering what font this was. And then also if I just hold Option to get the margin and padding to other things to get things like pixel perfect as we were going through. And if I needed more details, you can go into the inspect menu on the side, and this will tell you basically everything you need to know about this component. So the typography, any more pixel perfect things you need to do. It even has like CSS that you could just copy and paste directly into your code if you wanted to do that. Now, if you don't remember anything from my presentation, that is totally fine. The next tip is the only thing I hope people remember. Command / is our search menu. It works both in Figma and FigJam. You can search up anything. If I don't know how to draw a line, I can search up line. If I don't remember any keyboard shortcut here, I can look up keyboard shortcuts, and you can dig through here for all your keyboard shortcuts. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing a little bit of the behind the scenes of how we use Figma and FigJam internally to support building out features. And as a totally unbiased source of an engineer on FigJam, if you have features that you like in FigJam or features you would like to see, please drop them in the chat and maybe it'll be my next Baker Week. And I'll pass it back to Raji. Thank you, everyone.
Laura, thank you so much. And thanks for clarifying that one banger tip at the end, Command / the tip of all tips for people that just want to explore. Loved it so much. Loved your engineering jokes. I think somebody said you were one. I think Tara in the chat said, one of us, not only because you're engineering jokes, but because also you don't name your layers, and I don't either. So thanks so much. All right, let's move on to our next speaker. We're going to be having Bettina Chow up, who's a product designer on FigJam. And in case you're thinking to yourself, all I want is more FigJam, I'm really sorry. This is going to be about something different, but it's absolutely exciting. First of all, Bettina has classically conditioned herself to feel happy whenever she sees a small fuzzy mammal, and now has a reliable way to always calm herself down during stressful situations. I could use that superpower. The cool thing about Bettina's talk here is that Bettina's going to be talking about building your portfolio presentation in Figma. And these are some of the tips that landed her the job here at Figma. So I always thought it was such a cool stat and so very cool. And I love what she has to share. Go for it, Bettina.
Cool. Thanks, Raji. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Like Raji said, my name's Bettina. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a product designer here. Thank you all for tuning in, especially the ones who've been here since the beginning. That's really hard because screen fatigue is real, especially trying to stay focused through all of the presentations. Maybe you felt that way when you were in our position and you wonder, how do you make your presentation more engaging and keep people focused, especially portfolio presentations? And like Raji said, that's what I'll be talking about today, portfolio presentations in Figma. And I'll be talking about it by sharing some things that I did in my presentation to try to show more of my character and keep the audience engaged. And let me walk you through it. So first is intros. It's always important to share a little bit about your personal self. One thing you could try is adding animation and playful graphics to make getting to know you more fun. Here, I added animated cards that fly in to showcase some of the pivotal sources of inspiration in my career. And this was pretty simple. It was just an implementation of linked frames and smart animation, specifically using the gentle curve. Like, shout out to my Figmates who made that curve. I love it. I use it all the time, and it instantly up levels the fidelity of my motion every single time. Another way to do intros. So a theme you're going to start seeing a lot in this tip share is bringing more of the web's interactivity into our presentations. I mean, we can prototype such powerful software in Figma, so why not add some of that power to our presentations? You see this grid pattern a lot in products like Masterclass, or if you're just looking through a gallery of stuff. And I personally always like to share snippets of my illustrations. So I found this to be a nice way to quickly zoom through everything, but then still give each piece enough screen real estate to be seen. If you want to try it, just place all of your assets in a frame larger than that presentation frame. and then enable horizontal and vertical scrolling on that parent frame. Onto navigation. So it's helpful to have headers and footers to remind people where they are in the story and also who you are, because they just met you, so maybe they forgot who you are. If you want to leave an impact, you could try adding link navigation, like a website menu. And it makes it easier to jump around if people ask you questions, or for people to more quickly parse through your deck if you send them to link afterwards. This is probably the most complex thing that I'm going to show. How you can try reverse engineering it is you basically create the menu like a linked component, and then you link them to the cover image for each step in the chapters of your story. Another common UI pattern that we can leverage are modals. So maybe it's a hot take because not everybody likes modals, but they're really helpful for emphasizing a moment in your story while reminding people context through seeing the background still. I use modal metaphors here to talk about the pros and cons of a particular exploration, and so that the audience can recall what design we were just talking about, because they kind of see it still in the background. And this was done through a pretty simple step-by-step dissolve pattern. The biggest tip I'd recommend is using background blur, so you can adjust that foreground to background contrast. We can also borrow web interactions to de-emphasize information. Maybe there's an additional detail that you might expect to gloss over and you don't want to dedicate a whole screen moment to it. So you can use a scroll tip, a scroll-like tooltip, so you can opt into pulling that additional detail up. Really, I want you to think of this as the presentation version of a footnote. Another helpful way to use scroll is to assist in step-by-step storytelling. Here, I had a more text-heavy moment, and it's not really my style to just create placeholder graphics to balance out the space. So instead, I just made this one pager. And when I was presenting, I would scroll through each step slowly. That way the audience would stay focused on what I'm talking about. And how I think about building these pages that are scroll heavy is I design them the same way I design website landing pages. So including thinking about where the fold is, and just like the long vertical scroll. And yeah, this whole approach just brings back the theme of the web is borderless and Figma is on the web. So why do our Figma presentations have to stick to a 16:9 frame? Lastly, I just want to wrap up and bring us back to some graphic design fundamentals. To anchor all these fun animations and typographic tricks, let's make sure to maintain a consistent layout, type, and color system. If we zoom out in this entire presentation, you'll see that the base color for all my slides is light gray. But when I'm starting a new case study and giving context, I use blue and ochre for that context and product strategy context setting. And then I use black for every moment of decision making. And that ended up being really nice because a lot of the final UI designs that I was showing are light. And so the black background framed it really well. So in summary, the things I want you guys to take away from what I had to share is to just blend the wonder of the web more with the structure of slides. Simple technology can go a long way. You don't have to do really fancy animation tricks. It's really just about how you use the tool. And finally, have fun. Thank you. I'm going to pass it back to Raji now.
I hope you all, I can see the chat blowing up, and I hope you all love those as much as I did. As someone that has just designed simple slide-like things, I think my mind is now permanently changed. Why aren't we using all of these incredible UI design capabilities in our own presentation? And so such a great challenge, Bettina. Thank you for sharing with this group. Y'all are great designers. Bring this into your flow, bring them into your portfolio presentations, and we hope you land that perfect job. All right. So we're going to be moving on to our next speaker, who is Jackie Chewy, who's a product designer here, who has done an incredible amount of things for the Figma community well before Jackie even came. But Jackie currently is a DIY home improvement guru. Recently, he's been rebuilding his bathroom from scratch and is working on installing a smart toilet that automatically flushes and closes its lid after use. How designer is that, honestly? Incredibly so. Jackie here is going to be talking to us about speed tips. Remember the speed here, so pay attention. Speed tips for design noobs. Jackie, come on up.
Thank you so much, Raji. Hey everyone, my name is Jackie. I'm a product design on the editor team here at Figma. Today, I'd like to share 10 pro tips that I hope will 10x your workflow. And I guarantee there'll be something on this list that even you Figma masters may not know about. Let's start with the basics. The first tip I want to share is you can zoom into any layer by double-clicking on its icon in the Layers panel. I actually just discovered this myself pretty recently, and I couldn't believe not knowing about this for all these years. For the next tip, we all know that you can select a top-level frame by clicking on its name in the corner, but did you know that you can also command-click on the frame to select it? This is helpful when the frame name is too small to click on, or if you're like me, when you're just too lazy to move your mouse to the corner. Next, some of you may already know that you can select an object's children by pressing Enter and select its parent by pressing Shift-Enter. But now you can select the parent even easier by pressing \, which is the key right above the Enter key. So you can go up and down the layer tree with, just 2 fingers. Now let's talk about copy and paste. So previously, Mallory and Joe have already shown us how to copy properties using Command Option C, but that shortcut copies all of the properties on the layer. And sometimes you just need to copy one of them. So you can do this by clicking on the left edge of a fill or an effect to select it, and then hit copy and paste to another layer. This is especially useful for copying images from one layer to another without also copying its strokes and shadows. And as designers, we often need to screenshot our canvas to share with others. But have you ever had the experience of taking a screenshot only to find that everything is kind of zoomed out too much and hard to see, and then all the frame names are kind of like distracting to look at? So a better way of doing this is by pressing S, which is the slice tool, and drawing a slice around the area you want to capture. And then you can hit Command C to copy it as PNG. So this way you get a pixel perfect screenshot without the frame names showing on the canvas. Okay, so one of the shortcuts I use the most in my work, and the one that I want everyone to know about, is Command or Control Shift R for paste to replace. As you can tell from the name, it replaces your selection with whatever you have copied into the clipboard. And it's most powerful when you select multiple objects and replace them all at once. Personally, I need to replace the same things over and over all the time. So I like to pair this with the select all with same properties action, which you can find in the edit menu, or as Laura has taught us, Command / to bring up the search bar to search for it. And then you can use this to replace something that's repeated in multiple places all at once. When working with an auto layout frame, sometimes you may want to paste an object right after the child item. And you can do this by pressing Command Shift V, which normally is the shortcut for paste over selection. But when you use it inside an auto layout, it will paste the object just after the item you have selected in the stack. Now, speaking of auto layouts, let's go over some tips to get your auto layout set up more quickly. First, you can double click on the vertical or horizontal edge of an object to set it to hug content. Conversely, you can hold Option and double click on the edge to set it to fill parent. And once you get used to setting hug and fill this way, you really speed through auto layout setups in seconds. For those who prefer to resize paddings on a canvas, you can hold Shift while dragging the pink handlebars to snap it to your nudge value, numbers like 8 or 10. And finally, if you find yourself having to change the auto layout spacing mode from packed to space between a lot, you can do this more quickly by selecting the alignment grid in auto layout and then pressing X to toggle between the two modes. This will save you a lot of clicks going in and out of the advanced layout modal. Yeah, those are the 10 pro tips I have for you today. I hope you found something that will 10x your workflow. And with that, I'll pass it back to Raji.
Jackie, amazing job. We saw that the chat was blowing up, and I agree with Jorge, who said, I believe he dropped a soapy dish just to come back into the chat and say, wow, also great job, Jorge, for like multitasking on that. Incredible. The crazy thing is I have been using Figma for well over 6 years. And in Jackie's tip session taught me at least 2 or 3 new things I did not know. I don't know what that says about Jackie or me, but it's probably mostly good about Jackie. All right, we're gonna move on. Our next speaker is Ian Hall. Ian Hall is a researcher on the Rapid Research team. Now, they love riding bikes, their kid, and loud music, and I agree, I love loud music too. So Ian's gonna be presenting 10-ish tips to usability test like the pros. And with that being said, Ian, come on up. Glad to have you. Let's go.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Raji. Hi, friends. My name is Ian, and I go by they, them pronouns. I am a researcher on the Rapid Research team, and I have run hundreds of usability testing sessions, and I love Figma and FigJam. Today, I'm going to be giving you a verbal deluge of my 10 to 20-ish Figma usability testing pro tips. We'll have 3 big chunks before the usability test, during the usability test, and after the usability test. And you'll be able to see all of this on Figma Design on YouTube. Do not worry about taking notes. Again, you'll be able to see this on Figma Design, and you should also have a link to this after this session. So I will also say everything that I'm talking about here should work just as well or better in Figma with your amazing components. You just have to work on, how do you customize that for your brand? So go ahead and do that. As Natasha mentioned earlier, FigJam is great for collaborating and making sense of messes, and I love messes, so this is how to do that in FigJam. I'm hoping this will land with people who do research and help everyone do it more easily. So this is not a magic template, but this is how you can stay aligned with your team and be more effective. So let's get excited to collaborate and learn with customers and learn about before the usability testing session. What do we do? The first key step is to set up a flow for each key section to get your stakeholders into a fun and interactive session to gather questions. This helps create a memorable moment for the team and helps build alignment. This is so core as you are building rapport with new stakeholders and learning how usability testing works with your team. It creates that dialogue and helps your new stakeholders teach and learn about what usability testing is doing. Here, you can also include widgets like the timer widget in the top right, and we have a couple agendas here for you as well. The second tip is to include your research questions so it's really easy for people to stay aligned on what we're trying to cover as our questions. These are the questions we're supposed to be adding. It makes it easy to stay on top and keep track of those. You can really easily add rectangles, and you can even do things like add markdown for titles, and things like that. You can add lists. There's all sorts of stuff you can do in FigJam. So it's really easy to bring your stakeholders in and get them to add questions. My 2.5-ish, yes, totally. My third pro tip is to link your research plans. Again, you can do this with Markdown. You can drop a link to the Google Doc. You can drop a link to the Notion. You can also embed Asana tasks right here. You can see this is a live Asana task that I have, so you can keep on top of your projects. You can also keep on top of who is responsible and who is doing what. Again, as we mentioned, you can get into the menu to find plugins right here from the, yep, totally. You go right here and you can see your plugins and add those. So here you have a RACI that you're looking to add and go look for the template. You got it, and you can just drag it straight in. So you've got your RACI template. My next tip is to keep accountability. So make sure that your stakeholders are staying accountable and having their voices heard, and that the testing is having an impact. The bonus, you get to circle back with your VP of product to share fresh insights on the thing that they were hoping to learn about. My next tip is to vote to break a deadlock. You can very easily add a plugin and help people understand, here's where we should focus, and break that tiebreaker. My next section is on what to do during the usability testing sessions. So my fifth tip is to have observers take notes and set clear guidelines for the session. You can link your team directly to any section by right-clicking and copying the link here. It's really easy to take people exactly where they need to go in FigJam. Include observer guidelines and frameworks that you're using to take notes. You can just drop links to all of these things. You can create these frameworks. Again, all of this works beautifully in Figma as well. My next tip is to include the moderator guide. Making sure that the moderator guide is in there is a great place to take notes, and though it can get cluttered quickly. So that leads me to my next 6th tip, which is to create a section around each notes area. Copy the section for each of the participants, and you can make it really easy to take notes for follow-on sessions. Super easy to have the second session right there. You can also hide sections so that people can't get ahead of themselves and see the things that they shouldn't be seeing yet. My next tip is that you can simply, after sessions, you can meet up right away and discuss key insights. We know from the game of telephone that the further we get from a session, the less we recall. Agree on go do insights and then put them straight into your project tracking tool. My colleague Shayna did this with a usability testing tip recently. We saw an accessibility issue and she cataloged it right away. It was amazing. That is how we maintain velocity. After the usability testing is over, you have a ton of stickies. There is a beautiful mess. Make a FigJam section for each major theme or UI area. Here you have accelerators that you may be interested in. Any tips around accelerators you can drag in there, and now you have them categorized. You can also drag the section around stickies and categorize them very quickly. If you see a lot of purple stickies, there you go. Excellent. So next up, drag big stickies into the corresponding section. So after you have categorized all of the insights, drag a large sticky over and make sure you have a theme. Sort these stickies into order that makes sense, and then write a short one-pager to share in Slack. My next tip is that you can export your stickies to CSV. Just select all of these stickies and right-click. You can export the selection to CSV, and there you have it. Super easy to get your data right back out. You can also build a quicker report with color coding and interaction. So now you have these sections. You can drag these into the right area of the report, and all of a sudden you can see how the report should look. Last tip is to learn and learn. Every company is a little bit different and will do these things differently. So your first may not go perfectly. Open a new retro template and see what to do better next time. So here we have a retro template, and it's really easy to build these things. So go ahead and drag that in. And here we have a bunch of descriptions about how to use the retro templates, quick tips, and all of that good stuff. All right, those are my tips. Thanks, Raji.
Thanks so much, Ian. I think we know also that FigJam is the place where a lot of messy ideation comes in. So we had some comments in the chat about, wow, there's so many things all over the place. Sometimes in those groupthink sessions, that's exactly how it is. There's so many things all over the place, and then we calm the noise and sort of bring all that sporadic, chaotic, messy ideation into one place and organize. So thank you so much, Ian, for helping us through that and giving us some tips. We have 2 more speakers, so not much longer to go. Thank you so much for sticking along with us. Our next speaker up is Kai Sharniga, who's our design ops lead. Now, Kai is a licensed tattoo artist. I want one, please give me one. Sometimes tattooing from their home studio in Brooklyn when they're not jamming in FigJam. So this is another FigJam session, but it's gonna be all around tips for facilitators. So Kai, take it away. Thanks for being on.
Awesome. Thanks, Raji. Hey, folks, I'm Kai, and my pronouns are they, them. I run design ops here at Figma, and I'm also a huge facilitation nerd. FigJam has always been my go-to tool for running smooth meetings, workshops, activities, and as Laura highlighted earlier, one of the huge parts of what makes FigJam so powerful, especially for facilitators, are all of the widgets you can find built by Figma and also by folks in the Figma community, which is amazing. Some of my favorite widgets for facilitation, we have this activity tracker that allows you to track the amount of time you might be talking about something. So, you come in here, you put in your really important topic that the group is talking about, you press play, you've got a pause functionality, and eventually you can stop and you have a nice sort of little recording of how long your group spent on that topic. We've also got simple polls you can sprinkle in through your facilitation. So you can ask those really burning questions. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Obviously it is. You can come in here, you can add options, you can import stickies into the polls. We've even got things like donut warm-up. So if you're looking for like a really quick icebreaker or a really quick drawing session for your team, you can actually just drag in the donut widget and it will generate those activities for you. Wild. And we've even got some really fun widget artifacts like flip a coin. So, you know, hop in the chat, heads or tails. We're going to flip it right now. If you said tails, you won. I don't know what you won, but you did win. And what I want to do today, so even though widgets are so powerful, what I love about FigJam is how easy it is to build artifacts using what we have at our disposal. One of my favorite things to use as a facilitator is called a temperature check. These can help you get a signal on how your group is feeling, if people need a break, if they're ready to move on. So let's do something a little different. Let's make one together right now. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to drag a little section, make it a bit rectangular. I'm going to name it, drag some text in here. Let's call it How Are We Feeling? Maybe I want to come in here, change the color, make it a calming blue. And then as y'all saw earlier, I'm just going to come in here and choose a shape. So dragging in a rectangle, and I'm going to resize it to make it feel a bit more like a button. I'm going to make the color match. Maybe that's a little too light. Maybe we'll keep it a little dark. Something that's really fun about these rectangles is you can actually remove their fill and also have them as transparent. And then I'm just holding Option Shift, and I'm going to copy these for as many sort of buttons or sections as I want for this icebreaker. I'm going to Shift click all of them and just automatically resize to make it look really beautiful. And then I'm going to come in here and add my text for the temperature check. So something like, I feel excited and eager to move on. I feel good and ready to move on. You know, you've got a more neutral, I feel okay, I'm just here for the ride. You've got something like, I have some questions or concerns. And then you have number 5, which is, I really need a 5-minute break. You can see here that some of the text is truncated, and that's cool. We're just going to resize our section, grab all of our rectangles and drag them out. So now that's it. We have this really beautiful temperature check artifact. And what you can do is you can prompt all of your attendees to come in and stamp their face, how they're feeling. I'm obviously biased. This is my section, so I'm excited and eager to move on. And these are some real life examples from how I've used them at Figma. You can see here's one that looks very, very similar to the one we just built. Or you can also have some fun and abstract them a little bit using stickers. This is another one I've used where I just am using FigJam stickers to make it feel really fun and get a more abstract check on the room. So one more tip I have for y'all is how you can really keep your FigJam files organized, which for facilitators, super important. This is one of my favorite pro tips that I didn't know until a couple months ago. You can actually use sections to create quick thumbnails for your files. So I have this section already pre-made. This is just a section, some text, and a rectangle with some text. And maybe we want to make it a little bit fancier. We'll come in here, we'll add a sticker. Fun fact, this is my favorite FigJam sticker. Maybe we'll add another one over here, resize that down. Look at this, we've got a beautiful thumbnail. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to have set as thumbnail right here. And then you have the confirmation as thumbnail set. And then drum roll, if I go back to my files, and if they decide to load, there we go. We have FigJam for facilitation and this beautiful thumbnail. That is all I have for y'all today. So back to Raji, and thank you so much.
Hi, wonderful tips, great use of widgets and all sorts of things, but I love especially the humor in which that you bring into this. So maybe we could do like Kai and put some great humor in there to really get people comfy. All right, we only have one more speaker, and I am very proud to say another person on my team. This is Jake Alba, who is a developer advocate. Little known secret, he is our only developer advocate right now. Jake worked in a horse barn in the city of Chicago while he learned to code. I'm very confused about this because, like, why is that the place to learn how to code? But Jake apparently has done it and does it well. Jake's going to be talking about component properties. So that's component properties in Figma. kind of breaking down those, but also how that works with the plugin API and blow our brains. Last speaker up, come on, Kate, let's stay strong. Here comes Jake.
What up, everybody? I'm Jake. I'm a developer advocate here. I love components and component properties in Figma. In a previous role as a software engineer, that was the thing that sold me on Figma. And so I'm really excited to talk about some of that today. So if you are familiar with components, this might look familiar. If you're not, this might look new. This is a component set in Figma for a button. And we can see that we have different sizes, different color variants, as well as like different states. We have disabled states, hover states, focus states, stuff like that. And the component set, right, surfaces these properties over here on the right. And so this is like the big picture of how we describe this component. But when we're engaging with components, most of the time we're dealing with instances of components that were designed in the design system that we're using inside of Figma. And so what that looks like is something closer to this right here. So we have an instance of a button, and the properties over here are now editable and modifiable, right? So we can use the variant property type, which allows us to select from a list of different types of variants. So we'll switch to the large. We could switch to the danger button. But then in addition to variant, we also have Boolean, which is true and false. And then we also have new text properties, which are one of my favorite ones right here. So we're going to do I am Jake, right? And that allows us to modify the text without putting an override on the actual text node. And then last but not least, we have what's called instant swap. And so we have this arrow right here. And an instant swap allows us to swap out different instances of components in that slot. So we'll put the heart right there. And so this is really cool. Like, this is really compelling because it allows us to kind of describe our components in a structure that may translate really well to code. Speaking of code, in the plugin API, you actually have access to these properties and their values. And so I built a plugin called the Component Inspector plugin that actually makes use of these. So I'm going to actually do a little bit of a live demo. Fingers crossed, here we go. So this is the Component Inspector. You can find it on the community. But what it does is it allows us to select these components right here. So here's an instance of our button. And we can see that we have like a medium button primary, but then over here, we have what a lot of developers would be very familiar with is like a React instance, a React component, an instance of it. And so when we end up like changing disabled to true, right, we see that that value up here is changing. It converts instant swap over to like a slot property is what we call it. The text property ends up being rendered as children. And so this is really cool because it translates these Figma component prop types into something that an engineer might be more familiar with. In addition to instances, we also have definitions in this plugin. So this is a TypeScript React component function component definition. It isn't comprehensive at all, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But what it does do is it talks about these variants in TypeScript terms. So engineers looking at this might find this familiar, right? And so we have like the props interface here that's talking about, you know, like, oh, the disabled is a Boolean type. We have React Node as the slot props. We also have the defaults in here. So this is really cool. And I will also say that like we can also go into Angular and Vue and web components using this plugin. But let's talk about properties for just a second before we get out of here. What's a property? I don't know. It's a bunch of different things, depends who you ask. What do I mean by that? So in a Figma file, like the properties kind of look like this. We have a lot of different types of properties. We have things that are like, you know, in Figma, we have this pattern where you'll have a Boolean property like icon start exists that toggles icon start instant swap on and off. And that's not really something that in code we actually do. In code, we just say if icon start is there, it exists, and we don't need an extra property to manage that. So that's an example of how this plugin actually kind of simplifies a lot of that logic. You'll see that icon start exists isn't in the plugin code. But then in addition to like props in Figma that aren't in code, we also have props in code that aren't in Figma. And so this is where we need to walk the line when we have a communication between designers and developers. So some examples of those would be like click handlers, like on click, or an href prop, or if it called for it, an ARIA label. there are these other props that we put in our code that we don't necessarily have in Figma. So that's a whole conversation. We're going to be doing a lot of talking about that this year, which I'm really looking forward to. The plugin does allow you to like do things like add an asterisk. Well, you can make it whatever prefix you want. In my case, it's an asterisk in the config. And that means that like the state value will not be rendered in the code because we handle like things like hover with style in a code base, not as a prop. But anyways, my hot tip, getting out of here, document change events. So we saw how this plugin responded to like me changing the property in Figma, and the plugin re-rendered the code. What I was using under the hood in the plugin API is a document change event, which we added to the plugin API last year. And what that allows us to do is say, whenever there's a change in the Figma file, and I'm specifically saying, and it's a property change on a component, an instance, or a component set, then and only then re-render the plugin. So document change, super helpful. It used to take a ton of code to do that, and now we have a helper for it in the API. All right, that's it. Back to Raji.
Okay, Jake also earns the label of most rapid fire as well. We promised you were going to be rapid fire, and we did it. I want to add on document change to my life to change things about my life. I'm going to keep this short and sweet, and we're going to go ahead and end this. But first of all, I want to ask all of the pros that came up today to come off or come on camera to say hello to you. Future live streams are going to be at figma.com/events, live streams like this and other very different and cool live streams. If you have any ideas or new ways to do things, we'd love to hear that from you. So suggestions and ideas, send to an email at community@figma.com. Thank you all for sticking with us. I know it was a lot. I know your brains are kind of swelling from all of this, but I appreciate you so much. We love this community. Everybody come off screen so we can say goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.